Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome today to all of you who are here at the United Nations headquarters in New York. My name is Christina Stevens. I'm an advisor to the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, or as it will be referred to from now on, but I can't get my tongue around that one, IAAI. In the format of this side event, I am joined here by a really wonderful group of experts who are engaged in bringing citizens into the process of the SDGs and of the implementation of the SDGs. The dialogue of demystifying youth partnerships and innovation for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of them, which on reviewing are rather, they're amazing, but we know they are doable or else they would not be written down on paper. We hope that you will leave here wanting more, wanting to carry on this conversation and inspired to turn whatever moves you, whatever is your passion already, because you're sitting here in the room and you are passionate because you wouldn't be here if you weren't, and to turn that into action, into initiatives that will lead us into the next 15 years and to the absolute completion of these goals. Over the last few days, we've discovered the mantra is the same from all over the world. It's no longer business as usual, and the unity consciousness that is now powering our world is about to turn innovation into our daily bread. Member states are all agreeing the time has come for us all 7 billion of us, actually, to answer the call to create a global community based on unity, trust, and mutual responsibility, to transform our way of being on this beautiful planet so that we may protect and work with each other, so that we may protect and work with nature, honoring our differences, lending a hand to those in need so that all mankind may share in the abundance that is our sovereign right. That's the intention of the Sustainable Development Goals, and in reviewing them, they pretty much take your breath away. Everyone is complex, challenging, visionary, and as I just earlier said, absolutely doable if we all work together. Bringing the SDGs into communities through actions, we will need to take them into mankind's heart and mind. If you ever have heard me speak on this before, the heart is a far more powerful organ than the mind. The mind thinks, the heart acts. It will be the core of our transformation, and it will be the hearts and minds of all citizens of the world that will actually transform and actually do this. They're the engine that run the world. And so without anything more to say, I would like to actually ask Miroslav Polza, founder of IAAI and a global citizen from Austria, to read a very special welcome.
Thank you very much, Christina, for this wonderful introduction. So I have the honor to read to you a welcome message that has been sent to us by the President of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, and also permanent representative of Austria to the United Nations in New York, Ambassador Mr. Martin Heidi. Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear civil society representatives, dear audience of the side event on integration of global citizens and their resources into post-2015 agenda means of implementation design, organized by the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, IAAI, in cooperation with the World We Want 2015 platform in the context of the stock-taking session of the post-2015 development agenda negotiations. It is with great pleasure that I, in my function as permanent representative of Austria to the United Nations in New York and as president of the Economic and Social Council, extend my words of welcome to you, the representatives of civil society, as you join forces with member states and UN officials in our common quest to find the right approaches to connect our constituencies, and especially that of young people, with their creativity and ingenuity to face global challenges and create major global goals that will assist us in further defining the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda. As I stated at the opening plenary of the stock-taking session on Monday, 19th of January, we need to be aware of the indisputable fact that from January 1st, 2016 on, It is all about the implementation of the post-2015 development agenda, and what one must keep in mind is that the United Nations system cannot do it alone. We need to build effective partnerships to mobilize the unprecedented scale of financing and other means of implementation needed to realize the post-2015 agenda. Such partnerships for the implementation of the agenda beyond 2015 have to reinforce existing international commitments in a spirit of solidarity and cooperation. There is a need for national leadership and ownership, but there also shall be provided space for new forms of partnerships that are innovative, inclusive of all stakeholders, transparent, based on genuine exchange and reflecting the changed realities on the ground and their interconnected nature. Partnerships of all kinds will become ever more critical. They will need to be effectively aligned with a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development, be well designed, well funded, and enjoy broad political and public support. ECOSOC, with its mandate to be an inclusive United Nations platform for fostering partnerships among all stakeholders, will certainly play an important role there. In my function as President of ECOSOC, I welcome this highly significant side event. It is a valuable forum for innovative approaches to implementation for the post-2015 agenda. As permanent representative of Austria to the UN, I would like to mention also that I am particularly delighted to see that an Austrian civil society organization, the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, IAAI, based in Klagenfurt am Wörthersee, is contributing to the post-2015 agenda deliberations here in New York. Furthermore, I am pleased to hear that the results of the workshop held at the 2015 Vienna UN conference of the Academic Council on the United Nations System last week, where young people from all around Europe had discussions on an emerging Vienna vision, will feed into the deliberations of this event. The contributions of the civil society are an essential input for the work done here at the United Nations in New York. With this in mind, I wish you a successful event and look forward to receiving the outcomes of your work in due time. Ambassador Martin Seidecke.
Thank you, Miro. Well, you know, it's very encouraging to see citizens being given the opportunity within the UN system to participate in the change that they're going to need to live with. So let's begin our presentations, following which we'll have a 10-minute Q&A. Let me begin by introducing the gentleman over here, Mitchell Toomey. He is the director of the United Nations Millennium Campaign as of when?
January 5th.
January? Oh. Okay, so he hasn't been there very long, so don't grill him about things that he may not know just yet. Although, yeah, do that. Prior to becoming director of the Millennium Campaign, Mitchell held the position of Senior Advisor of Knowledge, Innovation and Capacity Group in the UNDP's Bureau for Development Policy. He has led groundbreaking work using digital media and technology to engage the public and civil society organizations around the world in collaborative crowdsourcing of development solutions focused on bringing vital services to the poorest and most vulnerable populations. Oh, are we going to need you? Mitchell also helped design and launch UNDP's Global Innovation Facility. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And, it's great to be here with all of you, and I appreciate the chance to speak to you today. I know many faces around the table, and while I'm new to the directorship of the Millennium Campaign, I've had the good fortune over the past couple of years of working closely with the campaign and the World We Want team, the Policy and Strategy Group, as well as the My World project, which some of you may be familiar with. But I will start with a very simple overview of what we've done to formally invite the citizens into the process. And as you know, it's going to be a series of trial and error as we go forward in the development of the UN's relationship with citizens. We have to try everything. We have to ensure that citizens have every chance possible to not only express their opinions and their desires, but actually be involved in the implementation of the SDGs. So allow me to quickly state what the Millennium Campaign's job has been, is to popularize the Millennium Development Goals. and to see to it that citizens call their governments to account to meet these goals. Now, back in 2000, there was a process to create the MDGs that was, some would say, a kind of a closed, traditional, very benevolent but closed process to discover what these goals should be. It was necessary to create a campaign to go out and market the goals after their creation. Now, that took years to get the goals, even to the very basic level of popularity that citizens might come to know the goals. And it took many years even thereafter to get it beyond the public sector and the kind of the policy environment to get them out there. That's not going to cut it this time around. The world is a different place. You have to understand the citizens are at the gate in every sense of the word around the world, and are demanding access to power, access to information, and access to the decision-making processes that govern their own lives. So as the deadline for the MDGs approached, the Millennium Campaign was given the task of leading some outreach for the post-2015 process. And this led to the development of two things that I'll talk about today: the My World Global Citizens Survey and the World We Want platform, which is generously co-hosting this side event. With the aim of bringing the voices and priorities and the views of people back to the United Nations so that world leaders and policymakers consider the new development agenda, the hopes and dreams of people around the world are reflected. So starting with the My World survey, many of you have heard of this, which is great, but many haven't. It's a global citizen survey led by the UN and partners. My World asks individuals to choose 6 out of 16 options that they think would make the most difference for their lives and the lives of their families. Now, that's an ambitious and very big agenda, and you'll notice that we started with a large set of options, 16, and forced citizens to think about how they would prioritize only 6 of those, which is, of course, a big challenge in itself. So the exercise of trying to go through that gave the citizens a chance to understand what world leaders are asked to do when they start to define an agenda like this. And I think that, not sneaking too far ahead in the presentation, but we're sitting on an agreement looks like to have 17 goals, and that's, I think, an acknowledgement that the world is ready for a complex agenda. There's a lot of people out there willing to do the work, and we don't have to pick and choose to go through a bottleneck of a small governance process. We can do more. So the survey was undertaken not by the UN alone, but we actually ended up with 1,000 partners at the local level and around the world who were empowered to go out into their networks and deploy this survey. And they did so not only because the UN needed this data, but they also would gain something from that themselves. Every vote that was counted by them would be presented for their use in a set of infographics that they could use to just understand their community better. Of course, the UN, in this process, we wanted as many votes as possible so we could get a big picture of all the citizens of the world. But the world is not one big place. It's a collection of lots of networks and nations and small groups and special interests, and that's just the nature of how the world works. It's a complex organization. And so combining lots of small networks together, you end up getting 7 million votes. That's not one at a time. And I think that it's important to show that the process by which those votes were collected in itself was an empowerment exercise that gets us ready to have an empowered society and civil society ready to help implement the goals as well. So we ended up with 7 million votes from 194 countries, the biggest UN survey ever conducted. It represented 1 out of every 1,000 people around the world, which is in the statistics world that starts to become a statistically significant sample, which is a very difficult thing to do when you're trying to get the opinion of all citizens of the world. The top votes around the world, number 1, good education. Number 2, better health care. Number 3, better job opportunities. This shouldn't come as necessarily a surprise, but it reinforces the fact that we have some work to do on the basic MDG goals that are still unmet, and the basic priorities, the building blocks for citizens to feel empowered are still where we've tried to put the attention in the past, but there's other priorities that came into it as well. Important for this audience, 78% of the votes that came in were from people under 30 years old. So this kind of it went viral with the youth, and because they saw obviously the chance to speak directly to power, and I think that's an important factor when we're taking this forward. How did we do this? We did this by working closely with local governments, communities, volunteers, youth groups, corporate firms. and with the support of a wide range of partners and supporters. We did, it's not just a website, it was an online survey, but we also did an SMS version of it and on paper, because we found that, the world is changing, but it's not changing the same rate everywhere. And if you really want to be participatory and get the marginalized communities, you have to be ready to deal with it no matter what. So innovation doesn't always mean going and doing something high-tech. Innovation means thinking about how to address each of your demographic groups in a way that's most relevant to them. So of the 7 million, I believe about 5 million of them were collected on paper. And that's a very important thing to remember as we go into the shiny new future. We still have to deal with the reality of today, which is that we need to do whatever it takes to bring people into this conversation. So across the world, the My World Survey is a testament of young people that are willing to spearhead global action using very creative ways to reach out to marginalized communities. Example, in Nigeria, we had a great partnership with the government of Nigeria. They have a youth volunteer corps where there's an obligatory service in the Nigerian education process where you can choose some sort of civil service. The government of Nigeria made it possible for those in that service to undertake the My World Survey. And so what they did is they went to every corner of Nigeria, every town, and came up with a statistically representative sample of the citizens' desires and needs in Nigeria. It's fascinating data. We have I think a screenshot of just looking at the data just from Nigeria. So we'll circulate the address. This is all available on the web, but if you want to look at what's happening on the ground in Nigeria, this gives you a statistically interesting sample to see just in that country, in addition to seeing the global collection. So we ended up with almost 2 million votes in Nigeria. So that's a overwhelming example of what's possible as we move forward together. Mexico City was another example. The mayor of Mexico City challenged the youth of his city to bring together 1 million votes of the most marginalized people, focusing on taking the paper ballots out to the neighborhoods and quarters of the city that sometimes were overlooked, that sometimes weren't involved in decision-making processes. And the youth responded. They brought in over 1 million votes from Mexico City alone. So this was an amazing mobilization, and the data is interesting and quite different from Nigeria, and we get to see like a little bit of a difference. This is not one uniform global agenda. There's different priorities in every country. So we also have now evidence of people using this data beyond just the idea of, wow, that was a great exercise to go out and collect it. Thailand, for example, the Thailand UN country team partnered with a local university to undertake an in-depth statistical analysis of the 69,000 votes that were collected in Thailand in 2013. And this is a perfect example of how My World data is used in policymaking and advocacy at the national level. The results of the survey were shared with both the general population and relevant government agencies for consideration in formulating policy responses. So it's to the point where the citizen voice, if you can catch lightning in a bottle, as they say, and show it to decision makers, they have to act. If they can continue to say, well, it's hard to say what the people want, I'm going to make my best guess, we have to prove that that's no longer the limitation. There is no such limitation. You can go out and ask people what they want and turn it into analytical information that's relevant to policymakers. We also have taken it's also interesting, there's another way to look at the data. You can see the general population of Thailand versus the population from this university. They have quite a different approach for what their priorities are. So university students aren't looking for access to education or better job opportunities because they know that they're going to be the privileged few who have that, but they are looking for better internet access and other things that come a little bit above along the value chain. Data is great, but the same exercise of going out and talking to people face-to-face that you have to do to get this paper ballot generates an amazingly interesting picture of humanity. As you said, the heart is much more of a important organ than the mind.
More powerful than the mind,
exactly.
Yes.
So we have the data for the mind, and that's of course important because people need evidence. They need statistical foundations for their policy work, but they also need to be moved. The people need to be moved to act. And so in addition to just collecting votes, we actually did an exercise that's based on the Humans of New York. I don't know if anyone's heard this, but it's a fellow that just goes out and takes pictures of people in New York and asks them what they're thinking about. It sounds like the simplest idea in the world, but if you happen to go to the Facebook page of Humans of New York, you start to get a picture of New York that doesn't come out of the stats or the news about what's happening. And the individual is sometimes the keystone to understanding the community. And if you understand the individual, you can start to understand the community. So in addition to presenting policymakers with the statistical data that they are used to getting from their policy advisors, we gave them pictures and we gave them quotes and we gave them a sense of what these people are really thinking about. We're taking that to the extreme in an event in Davos on Friday, where you take a look in the news for something about getting into the shoes of a person in a refugee camp and forcing the world leaders to really understand what it's like to be in their position. So this is something that we think is very important. Behavior drives real policy change. So I also need to mention the World We Want platform, because the World We Want platform has become kind of the repository and analytical base for a lot of this work around post-2015. Not only the stuff that we're doing in the Millennium Campaign, but amazing work that's being done by groups like Participate and others who are doing amazing work to go out and hear from citizens that don't often get heard from. We can't do it all, and we wouldn't even pretend to. Our job is to make sure that world leaders cannot ignore it. And we want to put it in the same rigorous presentation that we do for any statistical information we collect, because these citizens deserve that hearing as well. So the World We Want platform enables people to engage and visualize and analyze people's voices on sustainable development. Specifically, there's an area called the World Youth Want. Again, it's not just one generic population out there. There's different demographics that want different things. So there's a corner of this site that allows for the youth to go in at any time. It's still open, and people have every right to contribute. And those contributions will in real time be generated into the infographics we present to world leaders. This platform calls attention to the voices of children and youth in the intergovernmental sustainable development negotiations. So as a next step, we're a campaign, and campaigns have a variety of roles to play in this kind of arena. So when the SDGs are finalized and approved, and we are all hoping that there'll be a huge groundswell of endorsement from member states and political officials, we are going to take the next step and call to action those same partners, those same 1,000 partners, the same people who stood up and said that we want to be part of this decision-making process. We want them to be involved in not only keeping governments honest, because let's face it, this universal agenda is not just going to be about the public sector, not about federal governments doing the right thing. It's going to be about everybody, every firm, every organization, deciding that what they're doing that's important actually links up to a global agenda that has value, because we're going to all try to tackle it together. So every citizen deciding on a day-to-day basis what their environmental impact should be. Every corporation deciding not just to be a good corporate citizen, but to turn their business into a business that not only generates profit, but good. And every government realizing that they are the crucible for the will of their people, and they have an obligation to not only do good in general, but to be very specific about what they're supposed to do. This is an amazing opportunity. We're going to go forward with awareness raising, making sure that people understand these goals. We have such a great head start now that we didn't have 15 years ago. 1,000 organizations, 7 million people all around the world know that there's something going on here. And that is, if nothing else, a huge step forward from where we were 15 years ago. But still, awareness raising is a very important part of what we do. Second is assessing the progress and measuring the success on an ongoing basis to ensure the realization of the agenda. That's an enormous challenge. And anyone who's looked at the targets and the calculations and all those things, it's going to be really hard to figure out how to incrementally judge progress when the data only comes every once in a while, every quarter or every year. That's why we've got to be innovative about using new sources of data, new citizen-generated sources of data that can give us more real-time answers to the questions of how well we're doing in tackling these goals. Imagine how different the world will be in 15 years than it is today, just as far as communications, access to information, speed of making decisions. I mean, if we look back to 2000, I had an email account, and I think I had a MySpace account or something. There was a very, very fragmented environment of ways to talk to each other. We now almost, we get frustrated if Wi-Fi is down for a few minutes because we're so reliant on the interconnectedness and the kind of the shared knowledge we all have. It's going to only accelerate, and we have to set up an agenda now and a process for monitoring it that is future-proof, that understands that we will soon not have to worry about the constraints we worry about now as far as who's online and who can be involved. Finally, the third piece of this is the part that is most difficult, is taking this aggregate goodwill and this aggregate understanding of what's going on and channeling it into effective policy change. Because let's face it, there's still going to be a need for governmental policy change. That's going to be very difficult. Politicians are going to have a lot of trouble mustering the will to make some of these changes. But they'll make it a lot easier if they understand the citizens are with them. And the citizens are not only with them, but demanding it. And the citizens are not only demanding general things, but they're demanding very specific things. That makes the policy, the politician's job much easier. So we are a conduit for you to get your voices to world leaders. You are conduits to your networks and your communities to understand what they want. And so we need to kind of come together to make this decision right. But then after it's made, we have to go out and make the action happen ourselves. So we're looking forward to collaborating with all the groups around the table, the policy and support group of the World We Want, and others as we go forward in this. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Talking about how it takes a village and we all need to step in and help each other. Does anyone have an extension cord? It's coming. Thank you. This is how reliant we are these days, you know.